We can see dashboards of where project statuses are, how these projects are grouped together and whatnot, to know how well things are on track or off track, so that when we meet as a leadership team, we can pull up a board and be like, hey, are there any red lights across any of these things? Nope. Great. We can move on.
Your data has secrets. Secrets that could change everything if you only knew where to look. Welcome to the Data Secrets Podcast. Welcome to the Data Secrets Podcast, where we uncover how business leaders crack the code, find truth in their data, and turn insight into action. I'm Nathan Sedembrini, and today's guest, we have Chris LaFay, agency founder, website builder, and data sleuth on the hunt to make websites that actually convert. Chris, welcome to the show, my dude. How are you?
Hey, thanks for having me. I am excited to chat all about data today. It's gonna be a good one.
Is it data or is it data?
I don't think I've ever called it data. Oh, no. I think I'm a data guy.
You're a data guy.
I'm a data guy. So
yeah. It's okay, tomato,
potato,
data,
potato.
Indeed. Well, Chris, why don't we start by just learning a little bit more about you? Who is Chris LaFay? You have your company, Classic City. Would love, we want to dig into a little bit of the origin story in a second, but just kind of give us a current snap on, who is Chris? What is Classic?
So, my name is Chris LaFay, and I do run a company called Classic City Consulting. I have been in the web industry since 5th grade.
Whoa.
It is quite literally the only thing that I have ever done professionally. Actually, I take that back. I umpired Little League Baseball for 1 season, and I realized that sucks. It was just absolutely horrendous. I made one bad call the whole time, and I cannot ever forget how that coach reacted during that thing. And so I was done with that. So
you retired.
So, I 100%. And so
it shows
web
the
has
easier
been my
life
thing.
Of consulting.
I was like, I am too much of a people pleaser to have coaches and parents yelling at me for hours on end because I missed a tiny ball and strike call for a little league recreation game for 10-year-olds.
Yeah.
I don't need that stress in my life.
Sure.
So anyway, I pivoted at that point. That was a very key point. I pivoted and went into web. I started building websites in middle school and high school. One of those people who has kind of the creative and the technical side. So I designed and developed. So I was a linchpin for agencies as a freelancer. If they got a website project and they're like, oh, we just go pass it to that Chris guy that's a consultant for us and just do all of it in
you
one
were how old?
swoop.
You were how old?
I was I probably graduated high school going into college at that point.
And so were these like purely HTML kind of websites, or was WordPress available yet?
WordPress wasn't available. It was available, but I didn't know anything about it. Some of these actually started out when the whole like Macromedia Flash era was huge.
Oh, I remember that. Those were
dude. Oh, those sites. I mean,
yes.
Some of the stuff that was from the archives of Macromedia Flash, man, is just. Wow. The creativity that went into a lot of those sites, it's still a 10 out of 10. Like, they made it feel so real and so fun. There was a lot of personality to them. And actually, there's elements of that I kind of wish we had now, where like every site looked and felt different. We're not just all this like boxy style structure that every Squarespace site looks like. And so
have you been to runway.com? Have I sent you that one?
I don't think so. No.
It's this fintech startup. They have a website that it's like an adventure you go on. Like as you scroll down, it's like, and it's all airplane themed and stuff. It's talking about like your financial runway and being able to see that. It's super cool.
Yeah. No, I will make a note of that and take a look at it, because the more weird the web can be, the better. And so you gotta have your own little unique, your own unique place that is 100% yours and very much you. And so, And so, yeah, I was a freelancer for a long time. I woke up one day as an agency owner, basically. Had a lot of ups and downs and left and right turns and things like that. We started officially the agency in 2016.
Okay.
We attempted to grow it through 2019. Lots of failures throughout that time period. Crashed, burned, like the Phoenix rose again. And through 2019 through 2024, we actually grew much more logically and structured.
Yeah.
Still a lot of pain points within those years. And then starting at the end of 24 and into 25, still kind of rejiggering some things and starting some things fresh even this year. And so life has had multiple phases, from freelancer to agency to actual agency. It's been a fun ride.
When in that story did you bring on your first employee or start subcontracting work out to other folks?
I subcontracted before 2016, mainly because the couple of jobs that I had, I met a handful of developers and designers to where if I got busy, I would just toss the work their way. Nothing really official or formal.
Yeah.
But in 2016 is when I hired my first employee. I went straight from 0 to full time. And that was actually problem number one. It wasn't the person, it was the act of hiring that person. And so I saw that I had money in the bank and was like, hey, what do you do as a business owner when you have money in the bank? You go hire people, right? That's what I thought. I wasn't surrounded by other people that have gone through what I've gone through to help guide and put up the right, what's the word? Not guideposts, but the fences around things. And so that was actually problem number one there.
Yeah. When did you guys run EOS, right? For your business, entrepreneur operating system?
Yeah. A lightweight version. We're not official in it, but that's what we try to use that as the baseline.
Was that instrumental at any point in like creating an inflection for the business, or was that just something that you layered on and it's kind of incrementally helped you?
I would say probably the latter. And It's more so that we realized that our leadership team meetings were being very unproductive isn't the right. I mean, they were unproductive, but we chased a lot of rabbits that didn't really make sense. And so by layering a little bit of the EOS model on top of the business, we at least gained at a leadership level some of those boundaries. And so where we're at in terms of overall size, a full-blown implementation doesn't really make a ton of sense. But at least now we have our rocks outlined, the individual like subtasks and goals that we want to do week over week, month over month. We have our weekly reporting dashboard for activities that we're doing as well. And just that maintenance of those pieces of it have definitely started pushing us in the right direction, and we can start seeing small wins stack up.
Nice. Yeah, I definitely want to dig into your weekly scorecard dashboard in a little bit, but that's awesome. So where, you told us a little bit about the origin story. Where are you guys today in terms of size, scale, impact?
Yeah, so we're over the course of like 2019 through 2024, we grew from a probably $400,000 business to around $1.5 million, give or take. And throughout that time, we have had anywhere between 2 and 5 employees. Okay. We also have a fairly sizable bench of contractors that we call on for the stuff that we just don't do as much. So we have designers, content writers, data strategists, email folks, etc. that when we need to tack on those various different things, we absolutely can. So as a business, it allows the core work that we do for us to handle 100% in-house with full-time folks. And for those extraneous things or overflow things, we can then tack on people when we need to. So it keeps our overhead lower, but allows us to be really efficient in our core competencies effectively, which is web design and development.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, that's what I wanted to dig into next, because where we're headed with this is the data secrets that you've uncovered in your business as a business owner and leader for the last, decade, 2 decades, whatever it's been since fifth grade.
Yeah. Definitely very formal in the middle. The middle school area was a very formalized segment of my growth journey.
Yes, trading Pez dispensers and all that.
Yes.
Okay, so I do want to understand a little bit more about Classic City, and so who is your ideal client, and how do you serve them? Why do they come to you, and what do you help them with?
So we typically build companies' second website. We're typically not the people that are going to build your first one.
Okay.
Because at that point, you're testing the market, you're figuring things out. You don't really need anything super robust. By the time you're building that next site, you typically have a CMO, VP of marketing, somebody in that type of seat to where you have a marketing strategy. And most marketing strategies for a lot of businesses point people back to the website to convert. And so at that point, you do need a more robust website that can handle different parts and pieces and interconnected data and all that kind of fun stuff, more so than just a simple 5-page brochure site that, you're doing everything based off relationships at that point. And so when people are ready to level up and actually start utilizing strategy and using the website as their operating system for marketing, that's when we hop in.
Okay. And normally what size business is that? Is it after they hit a million or something? I guess it probably depends on the business.
It does. It really depends on what types of marketing activities they're doing to drive business. So mature organizations that are smaller, we've seen success around the $3 to $5 million a year mark for companies. But companies that are maturing their marketing typically a little bit later than that. So we see that around the $10 to $15 million mark. We don't do as much stuff on the enterprise side of things, although we have in the past, and it's been fantastic. The metrics are a lot simpler at enterprise when you get, 1 million people going to your site in a given month. A 1% change there does actually make a lot of sense. So
yeah, totally. Yeah, we see a similar thing in BI. Is the bigger the company, the potentially the bigger the impact from the investment.
Oh yeah.
Nice. And so are there certain industries or, so like I was thinking about e-commerce and Shopify sites and that kind of thing versus service businesses versus like manufacturing. Like, is there a niche that you've found most success in?
That's one of the, from just a business ownership perspective, that's been one of the hardest things for me to hone down on. Being a generalist for 15, honestly, really a lot of the time that I've been doing this, breaking that mold has been cast and is fairly rigid of being like, yes, we can help you. Yes, we can help you. We want to continue to help. And so really narrowing down to what does that ideal client look like for us has been an extraordinarily challenging part for me because of all that history. And when you look at it, there's been a lot of maturing in our company over the last 2 to 3 years, with various management challenges and growth challenges and things along those lines, to where the types of things that we're working on over the last 12 to 24 months have been the projects that excite our team the most. Whereas all the stuff we've done that we'll just call it 18 years previously to those has not been. It's been more just more transactional oriented. And so we're diving into a lot of those discussions actively. And where we've landed so far is we work with companies that are at this inflection point. Typically speaking, they're getting new branding done. They're updating their messaging, things along those lines that would then push them to be like, okay, we're done with this basic setup. We have a marketing strategy. We invested in this messaging. We need a robust site to match everything that we're doing at this point. And so those are harder to find because you can't just search on Google to be like, hey, who just rebranded recently? And so finding people at that inflection point is definitely a challenge. And that's something that we're working on figuring out. How do we target those people well over the coming year? And so you're kind of getting some live thoughts and processing here at this point.
Yeah, no, I think I wouldn't beat yourself up too much about it because, industry maybe is not how you define ICP like that. It feels like you had a lot of clarity about we build company's second site, which
bingo.
I mean, that's pretty specific, and it happens at that inflection point, like you said. So that's cool. All right. So why, there's a lot of website designers and, a lot of agencies out there. Why would someone come to Classic?
When you're looking to have a site that's going to last you the next 5 to 10 years, that you want to grow into effectively, that's when we're the right fit. A lot of our sites have lasted, like we actually just recently rebuilt a site for somebody where we built the first version in 2015. And so we launched it at the end of 23 or the beginning of, the end of 24. And so it lasted them a solid 9 years. They were able to grow in it. Their business was able to grow within it. And those are the type that creating that foundation is what excites us a lot. Yeah. And that's really the reason why we do what we do, is we like creating a foundation to make people's lives easier. And that's so awesome. Everybody can say like customer service and all these things, like it's all very intangible. Mm-hmm. I realize that, but creating something that lasts and doesn't cause headache and doesn't cause bottlenecks, that's where the wins are right there.
Yeah, because then it's not about, we've got the best designers or we'll build it the cheapest or, those type of things, right? It's like, hey, we're going to partner with you to build a foundation that you can then stand on for the next decade. That's awesome.
It's wonderful. I really love it.
That's great. Okay, so think about you as the agency owner running the business. What are your different data sources or tools? Like, what's your tech stack for running Classic City?
So we use Harvest for all of our time tracking.
Us too.
So obviously it's fantastic. Being able to see project level and retainer level analytics has been wonderful. We're using Asana for our project management system, which we have upgraded our use of that over the last, I would probably say 6 to 8 months. Our director of operations, Dawn, has really dove into it and organized a lot of our work in that to where we now can see, I don't look at them super regularly, but we can see dashboards of where project statuses are, how these projects are grouped together and whatnot, to know how well things are on track or off track, so that when we meet as a leadership team, we can pull up a board and be like, hey, are there any red lights across any of these things? Nope. Great. We can move on and be done and not have to think about it.
Yeah.
We use QuickBooks. Pretty much everybody uses QuickBooks.
Yep.
And we also partner with a fractional CFO, but also just financial analyst.
Tony?
Tony Wills. Tony!
Yeah, shout out to Tony. Love that guy.
Yes, I love Tony. Tony has been I didn't know I needed Tony. And I actually brought him in, not because I wanted to, but because my director of operations was like, I need Tony. And I was like, all right, we're going to try this out for 3 or 6 months and see how it goes. Like, but I don't think we need this. We're not at the size and scale that we need this. And he has been instrumental in the tools and stuff that he brings with him to understand how healthy we are as a business, and finding roadblocks in our financial data has been just absolutely wonderful. And we would have been more screwed last year if we didn't have Tony, needless to say. So 10 out of 10, highly recommend Tony. You dope.
Yeah, you introduced me to him. I'm a big fan, and I hope to be able to pull him in at some point. I do want to, at some point, in a little bit, we're going to talk about some of the insights that you've pulled out of this data, right? And I imagine Tony's helped you in a big way there.
Yes, very much so.
Any other systems? So we got time tracking, project management, QuickBooks.
Those are the core ones. I mean, we obviously have other like communication tools and things like that, but nothing that really is super like data oriented. That's of a lot of it. Like everybody uses Slack, right? I kind of wish we didn't use Slack, but here we are. It's a lot of noise over there, needless to say.
We opted for the Microsoft stack. Well, we initially chose Google, then went Microsoft, which, by the way, that migration, thumbs down.
I have no doubt about it. I don't know of anybody who's happy about that migration.
Yeah. But we're very happy on Microsoft. because we're working with a lot of big enterprises, and so we can chat same way as Slack, that you can Slack someone in
Yeah.
another organization. You can do that in Teams. Um,
Yep.
but then we're also in the Salesforce world, because Tableau is owned by Salesforce, and so and Slack is
Oh,
also owned by Salesforce, and so everything is Slack in that world. And a lot of
that's
the tech
right.
companies use Slack, and so we have both, which makes for like ping hell, but
Oh my gosh.
yeah, but it's okay.
I'm I'm sorry. That
We're
sucks.
here for it, right?
You got to be where the people are, man. You got to make
Yes.
got to make clients' lives easy. That's like,
Yeah,
if it's not easy, it's not going to happen. So,
totally. All right, so talked about your data sources, and so where do you go to see how the business is doing? You mentioned a dashboard. Obviously, like Harvest has pretty good reporting that's just Harvest specific, right? It doesn't have intelligence on payroll or other things outside of it. But so where are you going to see that like holistic view of the business?
yeah, so we we rely on a lot of Tony's tools to pull that together. So the specifics around how all that's aggregated, I'm not as 100% sure,
That's
but
okay.
what I can tell you as a business owner, what we're looking at from that data is we're a bootstrap business. I don't have investments. I don't have credit. I don't have this like bank of just hundreds of thousands of dollars of cash that I can just rely on in a bad year effectively. And
Hmm.
so one of the things we're always tracking is our days to $0, just to have a pulse on, do we need to make any drastic changes here in the next 30 to 45 days? And that single metric has been, what's the word I'm looking for here? Important. There's a better word, but important's all I got right now.
Yeah.
Has been important over the last like 24 months or so. That's been kind of our marker. And the other marker, the thing to balance that with, is our company's effective hourly rate as a whole, across all of our projects, across billable work, unbillable work, the whole nine yards. What is that effective hourly rate? And 2 or 3 years ago, when we started working with Tony, we calculated our effective hourly rate at $100 an hour, and that is not sustainable when you don't have offshore team members that
Hmm.
are much, much, much cheaper than folks here in the States. And so that was one of the red flags that we initially ran into when we started really digging into our financial data. We're like, why aren't our revenue has grown year over year by 20 to 50%? Why are we not healthy?
Yeah.
And the reason is we weren't charging enough money. Um, there were other aspects to that as well too, but that was kind of the core piece that we focused in on. And so month over month, that is what drove at every contract renewal a renewal of increased hourly rates. Because I'm a people pleaser. I'm going to be like, oh, let's keep everybody at the same because we like them and we want to keep them forever and ever and ever. Come to find out, we did rate increases across the board on a very regular basis, and I don't think we've ever had anybody freak out about it. Obviously, some we increased a little more than others. Like
Hmm.
there was a balance there, but we didn't lose. I don't think we lost any of our recurring clients purely because of a rate increase. And over a 2-year period, we were able to increase our effective hourly rate as a company from $100 an hour to close to 150.
Nice.
And our gross margins are obviously much better now,
Yeah.
but allows us to now invest in sales and marketing and things along those lines. So those two metrics in and of themselves, our effective hourly rate and our days to $0, using those as kind of like two North Star metrics really helped us be able to dig into what are the problems and why are these numbers the way that they are.
Yeah, I've not heard. So we talk a lot about days cash on hand, which is, I imagine, different than days to $0, because days to $0 maybe assumes that we're going to get some money in as time goes on. Is that correct?
So we have two number for days is $0. We have two metrics. So one of them is only related to signed deals only.
Okay.
And so we have our cash flow forecast to where, if we're on retainer with a client for $2,500 a month from January through December, they are earmarked at $2,500 a month, January through December. We close a project for 50 grand, and it's 50 grand doesn't divide by anything really well. 5 months. And so like 10 grand a month from, I was like, 3-month project, 50,000. I'm not doing that mental math here.
No public math. We don't do that here on this podcast.
Not at all. And so that's all flowed out. But then we also have connections into HubSpot where we have our deal tracking and we have our days to $0 with our weighted pipeline as well. And for everything in our pipeline, we have a start date, a monthly term, and then the total amount billable over that term. So there's some mathematics that go in to be like, hey, this one's in proposal phase. We're 40% likely to get it. So we take that amount, we start it at the term start, we math it across, the number of months that it's going to last. And so we have our weighted days to $0 as well.
Yeah.
And so this is purely not on it's still on accrual basis, but we're also taking into account all of our budget that we're updating on a monthly basis too. So we have our monthly budget plus our forecasted revenue out of signed contracts, and that gives us our days to $0.
Nice. That's interesting. Yeah. I think what we've done in the past with days cash on hand is kind of take how much cash is in the bank, and then kind of you were doing cash flow forecasting and thinking about signed deals and when will the dollars come in and that sort of thing. But you kind of have, at any given point, you have accounts receivable as well, right? So you've sent an invoice, somebody owes you money, they may pay you in 30 days, maybe 60 days, maybe tomorrow. And so you have to discount that. And then, the signed deals that you expect to be able to invoice in upcoming months, those are worth something. And so you're kind of like discounting things down to like actual dollars and then dividing by your burn rate per day and figure out, how many days can we last?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And
we also do have a like the days to $0 metric is still based on accrual. So if we went ahead and made that money, we are going ahead and putting it into that month, and also all the expenses going out that month as well. So our days to $0 is more in alignment with accrual. I will also say that our operations person, Dawn, has done a stellar job and has, honestly, our accounts receivable has been under like 20 days recently. Wow. So our accrual and cash basis are actually a lot more in line than I feel like most are, which I'm very thankful for, because awesome. It keeps our bank account healthy, which is great.
Yeah. No, I mean, profit is definitely kind of like the lifeblood of any business, right? It's like, it's the thing that enables you to keep going and invest and grow and all that stuff. Okay. So the other metric, effectively hourly rate, the way you were talking about it kind of would lead me to believe that you guys generally charge time and materials for projects, but do you ever do fixed fee and other types of, because there's other ways to do it other than just raising your hourly rate to get a higher effective hourly rate?
Yeah, so we don't actually do as much time and materials work as we used to. So a lot of we're either doing projects, which would all be fixed fee, or we're on retainer for a certain number of hours per month. And so all of those are still driven at the end of the day by some sort of output of hours. Obviously, when we're bringing contractors, some of those are flat costs. We don't really give a crap as much about the quantity of hours that they spend. So there is a little bit of understanding that our exact calculation of our company's effective hourly rate is a little bit skewed in either direction, because we do have contractors that just charge flat costs. But with all that being said, even though it's probably only 80% accurate, I will gladly take a number that is 80% accurate with updated data on a regular basis than flying completely blind. And so basically what we did, excuse me, to raise our rates over the course of those couple of years is I created some calculators for myself for projects where I didn't have to think about the number of hours as much. I thought more about the tasks because of my upbringing and being a freelancer for 15 years, I'm a fairly efficient person in what I've done. And so I always have undercharged the number of hours when thinking about things in terms of hours. So I basically came up with a price sheet of the 70 different things that we need to take into account for any kind of web building project. And I pre-assigned hours to each of those line items and also used some math to determine, hey, the more complex a project is, the more project management time that would have to be allocated. So there were some other mathematics around not just simply putting in basic numbers like an ordering system, 5 pages, 3 mockups equals whatever. There were some other multiplication and percentile increases and things to account for account management, project management, admin time, the whole 9 yards. That we typically forgot to include in a lot of our quotes.
Yes.
Shocker, right?
Yeah.
And so all of that in those spreadsheets
And then,
math out based on
Chris,
an hourly rate.
What about this extra feature that I want? That I really wanted this one feature, and scope creep sends you over the edge, right?
And that's why I stopped managing projects because this guy would say yes to everything.
Yeah,
and
same.
So that is where that was one of our big, from the last couple of years, from mainly in 23 and 24, where we realized when we looked at our financial data and we looked at our clients line by line, their effective hourly rates, whether they're project or retainer or hourly, we saw all of them dip, and a lot of that has to do with project management. And so we made a ton of project and account management changes over the course of those 2 years. And we almost immediately saw increases, both in client happiness, as well as our top line and bottom line, actually. And so looking at all of this data and understanding the why behind it, it's not just as simple as raise your rates and be happy. A lot of our problems, it wasn't client happiness before because we were saying yes to so many things. So of course clients were happy. We're just doing free work. Does anybody be happy with free work? And so learning how to put the right guardrails in place helped us out. And the only reason we knew about it was because we were looking at this financial data week over week and month over month.
Yeah, I don't want to gloss over you said something in there that I think is valuable for other agency owners or people thinking about this. And so just to, if someone's watching this and they don't really know anything about the consulting business model, generally the way you charge for work is either by the hour, so time and materials, fixed fee, which is we're calling project based. It's like for this many dollars, we will do these deliverables for you, right? And then there's kind of the third one, which is like a fixed fee, but over time, like an ongoing retainer model, right? Where, and you can there's kind of different retainers as well, where it's like retainer for access or retainer for a certain number of hours. And usually by giving a commitment that we're going to pay you every month, that the effective hourly rate, if you were to do all of those hours every month, is lower, right? Because if the client's willing to say, hey, well, we're in this for the long haul, then you can make decisions. And the thing that you said that you told me previously that I think is extremely like an awesome idea, because a lot of times, like if you think about where the risk lies in each of those models, right? So time and materials, the risk sort of lies on the client side, right? Almost entirely, because they're saying, we're going to pay you per hour, and normally there's a not to exceed number. But they're kind of taking a risk that you're going to do this in some amount of time that could actually be way more, And so there's more risk on the client side. Uh, Project-based pricing, the agency takes a lot more of the risk, right?
All us.
We're saying we'll
Yep.
build you this website, we'll build you this dashboard in our case, right?
Uh-huh.
And or we'll build you this data warehouse, and unfortunately, you don't really know at the beginning where all the bodies are buried and all that stuff, right? So, uh, and so there's more risk on the agency side in that situation. And so, if for you offering websites at a fixed price, and then having subcontractors that you're paying, you rather than paying them by the hour, where now you, the client, are taking all the risk, right? You've
Mm-hmm.
said, hey, for doing these tasks, so you're basically like asking your contractors to give you a fixed bid for doing these
Bingo.
tasks. Like, are you at least
100%.
align on, hey, do these numbers make sense? The contractor says, yeah, I would do that for X dollars. And so then you can now bake that cost with your margin into the fixed project. It's genius. So
100%.
did you make that up? Are you the genius behind this
I
idea?
I wish I could take full credit for all that. I have no idea where I actually learned it, because I do try to learn from other agency owners and other leaders
Yeah.
as often as humanly possible. So I'm sure it's some osmosis of multiple people kind of tacking in things over the course of years. Um, and it by doing it that way as well, you almost have a built-in out of scope mechanism, even for the people pleasers at heart. And so if you're as a project manager and you're having that contractor come in and you're doing a client call together, because the folks that we work with on contractor experts, we typically bring them in to client discussions and things along those lines as well. And they're in that conversation and they're able to say themselves, hey, I'm raising a flag on this one because, we said we're on design, we're going to go 2 rounds of QA, and now it looks like we're going 3. That wasn't in my scope of work as a contractor.
Yeah.
And so now that gives me some legs and a reminder to be like, oh, yeah, nope, this is round 3. Great. We need to call this out now and not let this trickle down into something worse.
Yeah.
Whereas when you have a full-time employee, you're just like, it'll take 4 extra hours. I'm already paying for this person anyway. Like, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Or even if they're a contractor and you pay them $50-$60 an hour, it's a couple $100 on a mid 5-figure deal. What's a couple $100 to keep the client happy? Yeah. So by fixed pricing it, I have found, at least in my experience, it gives me it forces me to go back to the client and be like, hey, nope, we're out of scope here. We need to either move on to the next thing, or we just need to increase our scope by a little bit. It doesn't have to be that much, but just keeping an eye on those things is extraordinarily helpful, and having accountability there is wonderful.
All right, let's pivot here into the data secrets agency files part of our show. We want to know about your secrets that you've uncovered, whether they're financial or operational, in running your own business. And so let's start by thinking about a decision that you made recently that was based on data versus instinct, where maybe you wouldn't have been able to do that previously.
Yeah, so over the last 2 years, revenue grew. We went from 500,000 to 700,000 and almost 1.5 million over like a 3-year period. And so leading into that, or exiting that year that we hit roughly 1.5, the following year we took a financial downturn. And so we actually ended less than $1 million that year. So thinking about the data, what had happened over the course of the revenue growth years. Speaking of instincts, I was hiring people left and right. Now, not a ton of full-time employees. I'm a very risk-averse person. I'm very conservative when it comes to that. And so I hired a lot of consultants and fractional folks and things along those lines to help the business grow. And my mindset on that was, as we're growing and scaling, 50 to 100% year over year revenue, reinvesting a lot of those profits as expenses to the business so that we could be more professional, right? If you're growing, you're going to be expected to bring really smart people to the table. And as we're doing different types of projects, I needed different types of experts. And over those 2 years of growth, what I missed was that a lot of these folks' time at the beginning was very much, we'll call it billable, simply. Whether they were doing strategy and things along those lines, they were directly interfacing with clients. Mm-hmm. But over that 2-year period, it was a very slow change. But those people getting paid the same amount of money, their time was going less into the cost of goods sold bucket and more into the expenses bucket. Mm-hmm. And agency world, the vast majority of the money that goes out the door is going to be people. It's going to be your cost of goods sold. It's a COGS heavy business model. Yeah. Your expenses are very, very slim.
Yeah.
And so when that slide happened slowly, the way that it looked for me was taking a person who we were paying both, honestly, on contract and full-time salary. There was multiple versions of this, to where when we brought them on, a bulk of their, we'll call it $5,000 a month, was going towards billable work. But then slowly, as sales increased, I needed more help on sales and account management and these other types of things. Mm-hmm. So their time, which was 90% going to billable work, dipped to 80, dipped to 70, dipped to 60, 50, 40, 30, 10.
Yeah.
And when you multiply that over a couple of people, and again, we're not running a humongous business. We're right around the $1 million a year mark. When you have a couple of people pulling in full-time salary type numbers, that's a good number. That's a hefty expense to add. And because it happened slowly but surely, we didn't really catch it. And so we brought in a financial analysis, Tony, and over the course of a year and a half or so, when we got our numbers more in alignment and better structured where we can see what was happening, we realized that while these people that we had are smart people, they're good folks, they brought value to the business, where we needed them at the beginning on that strategy and client facing and cost of goods sold side, we didn't need that anymore, which is how they kind of slid down into the expenses segment of the business. And we didn't realize that happened. And so we had to make some very tough decisions to move some people around and move on from some folks as well to reduce that bottom part of our expenses budget. And those were tough. They were obviously tough on me, but they were tougher on the people whose lives they impacted. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But going into the next year, we didn't have to close $1.5 million again, because that year that we had $1.5 million, the year after that, we lost revenue. We almost declined by about 50%. So you can't have an operations team that was running at $1.5 million and then drop down to $800K and have the exact same infrastructure behind it. You have to make changes.
Yeah.
And without understanding and having clean data to look at, we would have just kept running the ship into the iceberg that was looming ahead that we would not have realized without it.
Yeah. What I understand that Tony is doing on the back end is he's taking your hours worked and that sort of stuff, project level information from Harvest. He's combining that with the QuickBooks and the payments, payroll, all that kind of stuff, and helping you come up with a per project profitability and effective hourly rate kind of thing. Is that a good summary, or what else does he do?
Yeah, that's like nail on the head.
Okay.
And so 100%.
Nice. Yeah, and so without that insight, you would have been, so that was, where were you on the slow decline when you brought Tony in, and how did he help you course correct?
We were probably at the beginning of it because about 6 months into working with him, we had some very major come to Jesus meetings internally of, hey, now that we've gotten your crap better organized on the back end in terms of understanding what clients are financially successful clients, which ones are stinker clients or not ones you want to be looking at. And then also being able to see like, hey, looking at people's effective, like their bill rates and their utilization rates and whatnot, and having honestly the accountability partner for all of that as well. Of somebody being able to say, hey, this client has been a stinker client. Their effective hourly rate is X. Their margins are in the toilet. Why are we working with them again? And us having to go and say like, oh, here's the reason why. This is how it's going to turn around in a couple of months. Like, just hold your horses, we're good. Versus some of them being like, oh, this is a bad client. The people that are working on it aren't really actually, we're putting a lot of hours to it, but we're not actually doing a lot of work. This is just a bad thing all around. The people attached to it and then the client in of themselves, we just need to like part ways with. This is not a good fit.
Yeah.
And so being able to see all of that and looking at it on a monthly basis and being asked the hard questions about it is what really moved the ball forward for us going into that next year.
That's awesome. Well, I didn't realize that we were going to be building a commercial for Tony Wilson with this podcast. But Tony, we want a referral fee. If you want Tony's help, in the comments here, we've got a link in the description for equip.com. We've only got a couple seconds left here. Let's just pivot real quickly to our lightning round, KPI corner, the metric mystery theater. I just want to know, okay, so we've already hit on your kind of fundamental KPIs, your North Star metric. What are some like vanity metrics that you hear like your clients talking about, or that maybe you fell into early on, where you were like, oh, kind of like likes and subscribers, like things that maybe don't have an impact on the business, but feel good.
So speaking from just an agency owner perspective, one thing that I did not realize for a long time is the power of an email list. And I know people preach about that. Yeah. No number is too small to start. I thought that my 100 people that I kind of cherry picked as people that I knew liked me to send out emails to on a regular basis was too small to start with. It's not. 50 people isn't too small. Doesn't matter what that number is as an agency owner. One of those powerful things that you own at your disposal are the email addresses of the people that either have worked with you in the past or have not worked with you or inactive at the time. Don't undervalue that number, no matter how small you think it is. Staying in touch regularly has been an absolute key to some of almost all of the word of mouth success that we've had over the years. So don't let that small number dissuade you from staying in touch with people.
That's a good word. I think my Beehive right now has 15 subscribers.
That's fine. Just hit them up on a monthly basis, man. You gotta start somewhere. Somebody told me, back in 2016 when we officially started, the full-time employee that I hired was like, "You need a CRM." I'm like, "I don't need a CRM. We're so small. We don't need to collect this information." She's like, "No, we do. We need to start now."
Yeah.
And what is it now, 10 years later at this point, or almost 10 years later? Yeah, it was just collecting that information was one of the best decisions I've made long term.
That's awesome. Well, I know you need to head out. Last question. If people want to get in touch with you, learn more about you, reach out, how would they do that?
Connect with me on LinkedIn. I post a lot of content on there about entrepreneurship and websites, the whole 9 yards. And then also hit me up on classiccity.com. Take a look at some of the work we've done. And if you're looking to build your second or third website, hit me up. Let me know.
Okay. Awesome. Well, Chris, thanks for being here. And that's the pod. Thanks for being here on the Data Secrets Podcast.
Appreciate it.
Bye.